Hey, friends! Welcome to the Swing My Heart podcast with your host, Nicole
and Hannah. Come join us for some hopeful conversations about heartfelt entertainment that makes your heart swing.
Hey, Hallmarkies! Hannah couldn't make it today, but we have a very special guest on the podcast, our friend Kristen, who I finally got to meet in person at Rama Drama in June.
Yes. Hey, Nicole.
Hi.
Oh my
Hi
goodness.
again.
We had so much fun.
Yes, we did.
It was so great to finally meet and hug each other and get so giddy and talk about Signs Till Delivered and Hallmark and meet our friends.
Yes, I think you were one of the first people I met when I got there.
Yeah, you were the first person I met.
Yeah.
As soon as I got everything checked in, I was like, okay, I got to find Nicole. She's got to be the first one I see. And then who did we see when we were waiting in line?
Eric. I totally fangirled.
We did. Oh my goodness. That was so much fun.
Yes, it was. So what was your favorite moment of Rama Drama?
Oh my goodness. It was such a jam-packed weekend. Like literally there was an event all day long. I really enjoyed the SSD panel with Deliver Me a Podcast hosting.
Yes.
That was so much fun. And just listening to the stories and, the cast answering questions that they had. I think though the highlight of the weekend was the karaoke night.
Yep.
That was amazing.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that was my favorite part.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And you know why?
You were so brave and you went up there and you did so great. I was so proud of you. And I've never heard you sing before. So I was blown away. You did a great job.
It was very, very nerve-wracking, but it was a lot of fun singing with Kristen.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That was amazing. And then of course the Deck the Hallmark guys got up there and sang Backstreet Boys.
Yes.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
And then, Kristen Booth had auctioned off the wedding dress and Fatula. Oh, what an amazing moment of her getting the dress and then giving it to Serena. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was in tears. That was amazing.
Yeah. That was the second best moment of the weekend.
Yeah. It was such a good memory. I loved it. The whole weekend was just a lot of fun.
Yeah. I would have to say it was really sweet of Kristen to do the karaoke with me because as you know, she wasn't feeling well. She was a little under the weather, but the fact she still got up there to do it was really sweet.
Yeah, she was a champ because she had a lot of things to do over the weekend and, not feeling well. And she did it all very gracefully, of course.
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
And of course, meeting all the postables and the cast was a lot of fun too.
So much fun. The photo ops.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, those turned out so great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially the porch swing photo. When I found out they were using a porch swing, I was literally like, no way they're using the porch swing.
I know. What a brilliant idea. I don't know whose idea that was, but it was amazing. It worked out perfectly. The setup, how we all were, arranged on it. It just turned out so great.
Yeah. Karaoke was definitely my favorite part. I don't think that will ever fully process in my mind that happened.
I know.
And then, of course, the luncheon on Saturday was a lot of fun with Zach bantering back and forth with Eric and Gregory with the cubes one of the postables had made.
Yeah, that was so good. I got to record it on my phone. I still have it. So he, in Ramon character.
Yes.
It was so great.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have opened a hair salon in Milwaukee and you're going to come with me. It's awesome. They're all really kind.
Yes, they were so kind, so generous with their time, just talking to everyone. It was a lot of fun. I hope we can do it again soon.
Yes. And of
highly
course,
recommend it.
Yeah. And of course, all the other talent that was there is really kind too.
Yes.
Other than the Signs Till Delivered cast, who was one of your other favorite people to meet?
let's see, I didn't have a whole lot of time to meet the ones I had planned on. I met Brittany Bristow, and that was amazing. She was
Yeah.
so sweet. I got to, of course, meet Dara from Dear
Yes.
Hallmark, and then Jax
Yeah.
from the Bubbly Sesh, and that was a lot of fun too. The one person I really wanted to meet, but her line was so long, was Danica Mckellar.
Oh,
I really wanted to meet her, but it was just too long of a wait, for me, and so we weren't able to do that.
That's totally understandable. I
Yeah.
actually didn't get to meet her either because I had my photo op with Eric at the last chance that I could have met Danica.
Yeah.
So my dad met her for me.
Oh, yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Maybe next time. Maybe we'll catch her next time.
And I didn't get to meet Erin Cahill or Jesse Hutch either, which I really wanted to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're both really great.
Yes, they're awesome. And then Drew Fuller was another one I didn't get to meet.
Yeah, I saw him walking around a lot, and I was like, should I just say hi real quick?
Yeah.
Or, he was walking around a lot. Yeah, he seemed really nice too.
Yeah, I loved meeting Wes Brown. Of course, Brittany, which you mentioned, and then of course Andrew. I've got to mention Andrew.
Of course, Andrew Walker, king of Hallmark.
Neil Bledsoe, he is hilarious.
So funny. Oh man, he had me in stitches the whole week.
Yes. He did an amazing job hosting karaoke with Riley Weston.
Yeah.
And Riley was another person I loved meeting. She's really sweet. All right. Well, I guess that wraps up our short Rama Drama recap. Do we want to get into what we're here for?
We sure do.
All right, Hallmarkies. So today we will be recapping the Hallmark Movies and Mysteries original movie, Rip in Time, starring Niall Mater as Rip Van Winkle Jr., Tori DeVito as Sarah Majors, Eric Keenlyside as Calvin Majors, Joshua Black as Henry Majors, Casey Manderson as Ted, Greg Rogers as Waylon, and Ben Wilkinson as Dr. Silver. This movie was directed by Jessica Harmon and written by C.J. Cox. And for the postables out there, you will recognize Casey Manderson as the clerk in The Future Me.
Yes. The synopsis is when organic farmer Sarah meets a man who claims to be from 1787 named Rip Van Winkle Jr., she soon discovers old-fashioned romantic feelings that might be just as crazy as his story.
I love that synopsis for this movie. To start off our recap, do we want to go through a general overview of the movie?
Yes.
All right. So when the movie begins, we see that Sarah, she lives on a farm with her father, Calvin, and her young son, Henry. And I can't remember what he was doing. Henry was playing around in the yard, and then he starts to run into the house, and Sarah was like, wipe your feet going in or something. I thought that was really funny.
Yes. That becomes like a theme kind of in this movie. She has to remind him a lot to wipe his feet.
Shortly after, it is around dinner time. It's not ready yet, but it will be soon. And Henry goes into the barn to do some chores, and there he finds Rip Van Winkle Jr.
I jumped whenever he came on screen. It literally scared me.
I did too.
Wasn't expecting it at that moment.
Yeah. But this scene, we'll talk about it a little bit later. I loved this scene, and just the reaction from both Henry and Rip was priceless.
Yes.
We find out a few minutes later that Sarah's husband is gone. We don't know what the circumstances are, whether he passed away or if they're separated, but we will find out later on in the movie. And this is when Sarah has come into the barn with the gun, threatening to take action.
Yes.
Because she doesn't know
what
is going on. Yes. Rip's real name is Richard, but everyone calls him Rip. He says ever since he woke it's as if he's in a fog and just remembers bits and pieces. He's not sure where he's come from or where he's going. He mentions that the countryside and landmarks all seem familiar, and he thinks he's from there originally, or as he says here, as he points to the barn.
Yeah.
By now, Calvin, Sarah's father, has come into the barn, and he mentions that the Harrisons had the next farm over, but sold it a year before Sarah's mother passed. And then developers came and built houses on the property. If the Harrisons had a son, he would be around Rip's age. He was in the service or military, just like Rip. Sarah asks Rip, were you in the military? And he says he was in the 25th Infantry Regiment. They saw considerable scrimmages during the war. The language they used back then was hilarious.
I know. Yeah, it's like whatever that means.
Oh, I could tell right then and there when he said 25th Infantry Regiment, it was like old-timey war.
Oh, yeah.
Not that war is funny, because it's not.
Right, yeah. Just the phrasing of it.
Yes, the phrasing of it. In that scene, while they are talking about Rip being in the military, Calvin mentions that he served in the Navy, which I think was awesome. Another service member, or fellow former service member.
Yeah.
The sheriff of Doolittle County shows up at Sarah's house. His name is Ted. This whole scene was hilarious too. I thought it was a really funny first encounter between Rip and Ted.
Yeah, it was. It was a good scene.
In talking to Ted, Sarah believes Rip may have PTSD, but he doesn't think he's dangerous. Ted obviously likes Sarah, as he invites her to a dinner date at a new restaurant in a nearby town. We get to the scene when Ted is taking Rip to the hospital. This was another kind of funny moment when he reacts to the alarms going off.
Yeah, he's wigging
at the
out.
hospital. Yeah. And he gets in his room, and the doctor mentions that there are no signs of concussion or any other head trauma for Rip, but he's definitely confused.
Oh, yeah.
As he's looking around the room, trying to figure out what everything is.
Very curious.
I love when the doctor asks, will you be all right? And he's just like,
I know. I feel so sorry for him, but it's also really funny.
I do too. Yeah. I felt the same way. While in the hospital, Rip has a dream of his childhood. We see a few flashback scenes. The first flashback is what could be his parents fighting and him hearing the argument. The second one is a flashback of just him kneeling on the ground. The third is a flashback of him and his father, who's standing by a horse. The next one is a flashback of a younger Rip in uniform, and then it kind of transitions into him in present day in his uniform. Yeah. And the last one is a flashback of soldiers marching in war and the sound of a gunshot, and then he wakes up.
Yeah, it was kind of a bummer of a scene. You can kind of tell he didn't have a very happy childhood.
No, not at all. Kind of feel bad for him.
I know.
I believe this is the next day. Rip has left the hospital and he's back at Sarah's house, and he's talking to Sarah. And then Calvin comes up, and then I believe Henry walks up after that. And after a few more minutes of talking, Calvin asks Rip if he wants to help milk the cows. And he does it the old-fashioned way, and not with a pump.
Which is like the perfect job for him to do.
Yeah. And I must say, I've never milked a cow, but he seemed like he was doing it pretty well.
Faster than the machine, I think is what they said.
Yeah. In that same scene, Rip mentions how the apple trees need work. Sarah says it's something they would have normally done by now, but it's a bigger job than she and her dad can handle, and their farmhand left last winter. So Rip offers to help.
Of course, enter Rip's help wanted.
Yes. Ted has run Rip's prints and mugshots, but nothing has come up at all. He sent his prints over to the military archives to see if they can find a service record. So far, nothing has come back from them either. He believes Rip needs further evaluation at something like a psych hospital. Sarah suggests Rip stay in the farmhand house for a day or two, just until they figure out what's wrong.
Yeah, they're not going to find him in any of their research.
No, because he's from 250 years ago.
Yeah, I don't think they fingerprinted back then.
I don't think so either.
And they really don't have much to go on either. They just have his name, you know?
Yes,
so
just his name.
What exactly are they even looking for?
I don't know. In this scene, of course, Ted can't help himself. He invites her to dinner a second time, and she accepts.
Mm-hmm. Begrudgingly.
Oh,
she feels obligated.
Ted.
I know. Get the picture, dude. Come on. Get a clue.
Oh, gosh. The Harrisons that live down the road do have a son, and Sarah found an article about him. The headline reads, "Local man receives Purple Heart. Rip was wounded in battle and awarded a combination," I believe is what he said. So multiple awards.
Mm-hmm.
After Rip's haircut, they know that he is not the Harrison's son.
Nope.
I think Calvin said he looks nothing like him.
He doesn't. Wrong guy. It was worth a shot, though.
Yeah, worth a shot. Sarah wants to know where he served. Iraq, Afghanistan. Rip says he doesn't know those battles and that their regiment never got south of Delaware. The look on Bud, the hairdresser's face, was priceless.
Oh, yeah. It's like, what?
He's like, Delaware? Rip goes on to tell Bud they were fighting the British, and the farthest south they had battles was New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
And I believe Waylon had come in at this point, and they were just all like,
oh my goodness. Waylon, don't get me started.
Let's just talk about him for a second, because
he was a handful.
Oh my gosh. We'll get a little bit more into the conversation between Calvin, Rip, and Sarah after they left a little bit later, but
yeah. Oh, Mr. Know-it-all.
I do have to say, though, Greg Rogers played that part very well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been in a lot of Hallmark movies.
Oh, yeah.
I know one specifically was Miss Christmas with Brooke Dorsey.
Yeah.
Going back to Waylon for a second, he tells Rip that he is a Revolutionary War buff himself and is quite an admirer of that period. Rip's response was priceless.
Oh my goodness. I was cracking up. I LOL'd.
He said something about, "Are you telling me you like war?" or something along those lines.
Yeah. Oh,
Waylon.
Mm-hmm.
According to Calvin, Waylon is a know-it-all who thinks he invented the American Revolution, and to hear him talk, he was leading the troops himself.
No thanks.
No, thank you. Henry and Rip are working on fixing the holes where the raccoons are getting in. Calvin mentions that Rip does seem to know his way around the farm, so they ask if he wants to stay on as their farmhand.
Yay.
Yeah, which I thought was awesome.
Yeah.
Of course, Rip will stay in the farmhand house, and Errol, their farmhand from before, lived and worked there before they even bought the farm. Rip recognizes the farmhouse and says it's where he grew up.
What? I was not expecting that.
Although I think I do remember seeing this scene in a sneak peek before the movie aired.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of wish we hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Because it kind of
ruined that moment a little bit.
It was still a good scene, but
yeah, the surprise element of it was taken away.
It took away a little bit of the suspense.
Yeah.
But still a great scene. He believes something isn't right because everything is new. I love when he walks in and he's just like, everything is new.
It's like, what is your definition of new? Because this stuff looks old.
Yeah. And Sarah's like, no, everything is new. Rip finds a piece of wood with markings that Calvin says are before their time. Those markings are initials with Roman numerals, RV, W, and then Roman numerals 2, which is, of course, Rip Van Winkle II. He was 8 years old when he carved them, and his mother was not so happy about that. She took the stitches to him.
Oops. Yikes.
The numbers are his birthday. This exchange, we can talk about it a little bit later, but it cracks me.
Yes, I loved it.
When he realizes what year it is. Sarah's like, no, it's so 2022. And then he starts getting dizzy and he faints.
Oh, yes. All too much for him. Too much information.
While in the farmhouse, Calvin gives Rip a book, which is the sketchbook of Jeffrey Crayon. And he tells him to read the story where the bookmark is, which is a story titled Rip Van Winkle, which is about his father, but Rip says that it's an absurd story.
Yes, it's a lie.
It's a lie. Of course, Sarah agrees because she says it's an old folk tale. And Henry says it's not real. Rip mentions Washington Irving and how he knows him. He is a boy who's always lingering around about the tavern, which Rip's father frequents. The fact he says frequent.
Oops.
Just some of the vocabulary back then just always makes me laugh, but smile at the same time.
Yeah.
It's just like that old-fashioned language.
They stuck with the old-fashioned, the wardrobe and the dialogue. It was really cool.
Yes, they did. Rip says that his father is a liar and a drunk, and like I just said, that his story is absurd. Rip was born in that house and christened after his father, Richard Van Winkle Sr. And then he goes on to tell the story about his life and his father and his mother. He says he was a man of minor ambition, which did not sit well with my mother. She was a woman of flaring tempers with ample wind to fan them. Considering the harsh state of his parents' union, Rip says that it should not have come as a surprise when his father disappeared completely, but yet he keenly felt his absence. The burden of the farm work fell to him at a young age. His father's abandonment became like coals from a low-stoked fire. It fueled his determination not to be like him. When he was 17, a storm that had been brewing began to blow, even into the tranquil valley. And at this moment, we see a flashback clip of 2 soldiers coming to give Rip a piece of paper about entering the war. Thus, he found himself fighting in that grim and bloody conflict, which would make of this a free nation. Independence was won at great cost. He was wounded, but luckier than most. Times were hard, but the farm was constant, and they still had the land to provide for them. As time passed, his mother passed, as well as his sister Mary. He was left to tend the field and fight the sting of his father's abandonment. It was with quite astonishment that one day a strangely familiar figure appeared. After 20 years, his father had returned, and to excuse his graven desertion, he concocted the most outlandish tale. He claimed that he had gone hunting for game amidst the local hills. After trailing much farther than planned, he came into a high dell where he found a stash of brandy in a curious cave. After helping himself to that brandy, his father claimed that a fearsome thunderstorm roared across the valley, and it was there, he stated, that he must have fallen asleep for 20 years. Rip thought his father's story was a preposterous claim, and he determined to prove that there was no cave as he described. However, after a prolonged journey nestled along the eastern ridge of the mountain, he was forced to temper his disbelief in finding it. His timing was fortuitous. Mm-hmm. At that time, the dark rolling clouds which had been pursuing him linked as if the heavens themselves were rent. To his surprise, there was a bottle of brandy just as his father had described. As the storm settled upon his bones, he was obliged to take a sip of the brandy, and as the storm raged, he fell into a deep slumber. When he awoke, he became aware of the ravenous hunger and set back down the mountain, but found himself in a strange and altered landscape where pine trees had stood just hours before. There was now just brush and bramble. Streams had turned into rock and impassable woods. Rip says it was as though he was looking upon the world anew, and he didn't understand why. His mind was cloudy as if he had been through some dream. It was shortly after that he encountered Sarah, Henry, and Calvin in the barn. And that is his story.
And that's the story of Rip Van Winkle.
Yes. I believe this was the next day. Sarah goes to the police station and she has a conversation with Ted. He tells her that he still has not heard back from the military and he thinks it's time to call in some help, which he means have him committed by the county under a 5150 until they get a sense of what's going on.
Bad idea.
Bad idea. No. That's not going to do anything. A few scenes after Sarah's conversation with Ted at the police station, we see Rip and Henry have a conversation on the rock. And we can talk about it a little bit more in a little bit, but I really liked that scene. It was
Me too.
A good one.
Good scene.
Rip tells Henry that when he was his age, rocks were hardly ever just rocks. More often, they were watchtowers and ramparts. There used to be two big boulders right across from where they were sitting, which was Fort Duquesne. Fort Duquesne was an outpost in the French and Indian War. And then Henry tells Rip that he got in a fight with Wiley Shump at school. Wiley Shump.
Big bully.
And we see in one of the scenes before this, Henry on the bus having a conversation with Wiley, and Wiley is just being a
brat.
A brat, yeah. A bully.
There you go.
While talking to Henry, Rip also points out a wall that he built and that some of the rocks were nearly as big as him, but he learned to use leverage to move them. We see Sarah doing some more research on veterans with PTSD. She finds an article and the headline is Groundbreaking Treatment for Veterans with PTSD. So we can assume that she will contact this doctor.
Yes. Try to see if she can help
set up a meeting. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the next scenes, I really love this one too. We could talk about it more later, but Sarah is on the porch and just enjoying the peace and quiet. She's in the rocking chair and Rip walks up and he says something about being sorry that he's interrupting her, and she's like, no, you're not bothering me. And they start talking and she's playing a bowling game on her phone and she asks if he had games like that when he was growing up. And he said that they had games similar to bowling, like 9 pins, but mostly they made their own toys.
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes on to
Yes.
pick up the blade of grass, which we could talk a little bit more about that later, because I love that part. That was priceless.
Yes, loved that.
The next day, Sarah is sitting on her front porch steps, and Henry and Rip are inside the house, and we don't know what they were doing, but they are walking outside, and he's asking him if he knew the Pilgrims, I believe.
Yeah.
And then Rip joins Sarah on the steps, and I believe Sarah tells Henry to go do his homework, so Henry goes inside, and Sarah and Rip are talking, and Rip mentions that he's not married and hasn't found much time for courtship. Sarah's girlfriends in the city put their career before marriage and kids. They won't even think about it until they feel they've really established themselves. When Rip first arrived, he found himself amazed by the new societal constructs. According to Sarah's research, there is a doctor at New York College of Medicine and Technology. She contacted her and told her about Rip. The doctor is very interested in his story and very curious to meet him. And we see them go to New York.
Yay.
This scene was another favorite.
Oh, yes.
Which we'll talk about later. But Rip meets with the doctor, and he's sitting up in the hospital bed, and she's sitting in a chair next to the bed. And she tells him that as she counts backwards, his eyes will become heavier and heavier. And when she reaches 1, he will be in a deep hypnotic state. Then it cuts to after they have done the test. And the doctor believes, as a coping mechanism, Rip's brain has created an elaborate delusion which places his trauma to a war almost 250 years in the past. And then it makes it somehow safer for him. She also mentions that it's not common and it's quite unusual. So the doctor wants to do a few more tests. And after those tests, we see the doctor and her team in front of an X-ray machine. And of course, Rip and Sarah are there too. And they have found a bullet in Rip's leg where he had gotten shot in the Revolutionary War. And it is a bullet that stopped being made in 1820. I love the look on the doctor's face. The one that was telling what type of bullet it was. And the doctor tells him, "We pulled it out of this man's leg." And he looked at him like, "What?" This does not seem possible. Or no, I believe he said something about going above and beyond for reenactments.
Oh, yes. He's like,
That was priceless. So after they have done the surgery to pull the bullet out of Rip's leg, after they have done the surgery to pull the bullet from Rip's leg, he and Sarah, they go on a walk in New York, of course, and she tells him that she used to live there. She left 10 years ago until her baby daddy left. They weren't married, so she was pregnant with Henry out of wedlock. Simon left right before Henry was born.
Sad.
Ouch.
That stinks.
She also tells him that her parents had just retired and she was feeling a bit overwhelmed, so she took a hiatus on her advertising job. She thought it would be temporary, then her mom got Alzheimer's, so she stayed. It was a difficult few years. She realized people need healthy foods, not food filled with chemicals. And being an organic farmer is where she really feels like she accomplishes something.
Yeah. I thought that was really nice. I thought that was a nice little touch to her backstory.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sarah and Rip meet with the doctor again. She says when they run out of probable explanations for his story, it's time to consider improbable ones. They've had a request for Rip to discuss all of this with Dr. Silver, who teaches quantum theory in their physics department. In meeting with Dr. Silver, he says they run different combinations of elements through their computer models in order to formulate an equation that would account for certain types of quantum anomalies. I love Rip's reaction. He was like, "Do you understand any of this? Because I don't."
And I was like, me either, Rip. You're not the only one.
I don't understand any of that. I mean, I loved science, but I never took quantum theory, and that's just like over my head.
Totally.
I love how into it Dr. Silver got. He was like, and this happened.
Yeah. Yes, that was perfect.
And Ben Wilkinson played that part very well.
Yeah, yeah.
He's been in a lot of Hallmark movies as well.
Yeah.
Mystery 101 was one I can specifically remember. One of the Mystery 101 movies.
Yeah, he either usually will play like the bad guy or like the ex-boyfriend or like the boss, you know.
Yeah, the corporate boss.
The corporate boss. He does that perfectly.
Yes. He mentions that Rip may represent the living embodiment of that theory. Quantum physics is a science that examines physical phenomena, usually along a subatomic scale. An example, they've recently traced amounts of new uranium particles and placed them at the site where the nuclear bomb was tested. They've noticed disturbances in the present day uranium particles similar to what they'd expect to find after a nuclear blast, even though that event took place over 70 years ago. There seems to be a connection between the particles that exist across time. From the establishment of the colonies all the way up to the present time, they have always assumed that time moves us at a consistent pace, just one way along that line. But the behavior of the uranium particles suggests that great energetic disturbances create wormholes. This would explain how someone like Rip from his time period could end up here in present day. If the cave that Rip mentioned had high amounts of lead, zinc, and trace amounts of a radioactive element like uranium or radium, and it was subject to sudden intense jolts of energy, like the lightning strike he described, it would effectively create a wormhole. That wormhole would result in a fold or tear in time, landing Rip in the future.
Ooh, so there's your explanation.
Yes, that was a lot of words, a lot of information.
A lot, yeah.
And I would venture to say that is where they came up with the title of this movie, from that scene.
Right, yeah.
There's a tear in time, but another word for tear is rip. So a rip in time.
Very double entendre.
Yes. Sarah wants to know if his story is real, and Rip wants to know if he can get back to his own time. Dr. Silver says the answer to both of their questions is theoretically yes. In his conversation after the meeting with Dr. Silver, Rip says that some days on the farm, he feels as if there's no place he'd rather be, but there are other times, like the trip into the city, where he worries he might never fit into this new world.
No.
The next day, we see Sarah at her house. I believe she is preparing for the festival. And Ted comes in and he's talking to her, and he informs her that he got a response from the National Military Archive, and there's no record of Rip ever having served in the military. He says that people in town are talking about Rip's story and are more than a little concerned, and that he's heard of situations like this before. I love how Sarah's like, you've heard of situations like Rip's.
Yeah. Come on now.
No.
No.
He believes Rip is possibly a con artist trying to take advantage of Sarah, Henry, and Calvin. Okay. Let's just talk about this for a second, because I can appreciate Ted trying to be a good friend and look out for her, but that's just like taking it a little too far.
Yeah.
I mean, give him the benefit of the doubt that something is going on.
Yeah, exactly.
In this moment, I was like, I can sense some jealousy here.
Oh, totally. Oh, yes, the green-eyed monster.
So they go to the festival, they have a great time, and we'll talk about this scene a little bit more in just a little bit. But when they get home, it is pouring down rain, and Calvin falls asleep in the chair next to the fireplace. And Rip, being the nice guy he is, he grabs a blanket and puts it over Calvin so he doesn't get cold.
Yeah.
Taking care of her father, that's really sweet.
Yeah, it was.
Then he walks over to Sarah and they say their goodnights, and he walks out the door, and then she follows him and they share their first kiss. And we can talk about this a little bit more later, but such a good moment.
Yes, it was.
Ted comes by the farmhand house to talk to Rip.
I know.
Ugh.
Such a slime ball.
Oh, I have some words.
Yes.
Rip mentions he has a tremendous admiration for Sarah and her accomplishments. And this is when Ted is fidgeting with something of Rip's that's sitting on the table. I believe it's his journal. And he kind of takes it away from him as he's saying that.
Mm-hmm.
Ted believes Rip is thinking things are going according to plan.
Nope.
Ted admits he loves Sarah and refuses to see her hurt. He tells Rip if he truly loves Sarah, he should do the right thing and let her go. And basically go back to where he came from.
Ugh.
Ugh.
Get out of here, Ted.
Go. Just go.
Uh-huh. We don't need you.
Oh. Oh, goodness. Yeah. Just, he can go.
Yes.
And we could talk about this scene a little bit more later because I have some of the dialogue written down. But that scene made me cry a little bit.
Yeah, it was sad.
But Casey Manderson played that part very well.
Yes.
He's a great actor.
Yes.
And I believe it is time for him to have his own leading role.
There you go. Yeah.
The next day, we see Calvin at the kitchen table. He's listening to the storm radio, and the storm caused road closures and temporary power outages, as Sarah said, because her alarm didn't go off. So they were running a little bit late. There is also a report of a downed electrical line, and major precipitation is expected throughout the day.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. And we get to the last few scenes of the movie. Rip has decided to try to make his way back home. He leaves a note to Henry, Sarah, and Calvin. And after reading the note, Sarah decides to go after him and try and stop him from going back. Henry and Calvin go with her, but they only walk basically half the way there.
Yeah.
Sarah eventually finds Rip in the cave. Rip mentions his conversation with Ted, and then they talk for a few more minutes, and he proposes, but Sarah mentions they don't have to get married just yet and suggests going on a date.
Yes. Try dating a little bit before you get married.
Yeah, a little too soon.
A little too soon. Yeah, I'm glad she said that because that would have been crazy if she would have said yes.
Yeah. Do we want to get into our favorite and funniest moments?
Yes.
You want to go first?
Yes, let's see. Right after Rip gets his haircut at the barber, and he bites into the sucker with the wrapper on. I knew it was coming. As soon as he got the sucker, I was like, he's not going to know what to do with that. And
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
enough, he just bites right into it. I thought that was
yeah.
so funny. He takes the wrapper off and like throws it on the ground.
Yeah. I have the dialogue from that scene, and I'll start before he bites into the lollipop. Sarah, Rip, and Calvin, they're walking through town and they're talking about Waylon, like we mentioned a little while ago.
Mm-hmm.
And after what Calvin had said about Waylon, Rip responds by saying, absurd. And Sarah says, exactly. Rip, he bears no resemblance to General Washington. Sarah, okay, come on, Paul Revere, this way. Got to get to the car that way. And then he bites into the lollipop with the wrapper on it. And like, what are you doing? And Rip's like, you give these to children? Sarah's like, you have to take the wrapper off, that outside part. Oh, all right. He just like throws it on the littering.
Littering, yeah. She kind of looks at him when he does that, like, wait a second, you can't just throw it on the ground. That was a really great scene. Anytime he was kind of like astonished at like all the new things were really great scenes. I feel like Niall Mater was the perfect actor to play this role, this character.
Yes.
He did an amazing job.
Yes.
He was so believable. Yeah. Like, I really loved that he got to do this. Another favorite scene was, of course, Rip playing like on the little blade of grass, like the kazoo sound.
Yes.
She was like, it sounds like a duck call.
Yes.
Which was perfect. I also loved them sitting on the steps and talking about like the progression of women's roles in society now. And I don't know, have you ever seen the musical Hamilton?
No, I have not.
Okay, so there's a song in Hamilton that the Schuyler sisters sing, and Angelica has this line in the song where they say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. And then she says, and when I meet Thomas Jefferson, I'm going to compel him to include women in the sequel.
Wow.
And so this reminded me of that moment, because he says that he thinks Thomas Jefferson should have added women to.
Wow, that's a great reference.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder if they, did that on purpose, or I thought that was really cool.
That's possible that they could have.
All the bonding moments between Rip and Henry were great.
Yes. Yeah.
The little actor who played Henry, what was his name? Joshua Black. He did such a great job.
Yeah.
Such a great job.
Yeah.
I also had down them touring New York City and talking about America. And when they were up looking over on the edge, and they were looking down at the city. That was a really sweet scene. Yeah. And romantic too.
Yes.
Of course, them dancing at the festival.
Yes.
It started out really funny with Rip's dance moves.
Yeah.
That was really enjoyable. But then it turned really sweet. I really loved that.
I love how before they dance, he's like holding his ears and he's like, it's loud. Where are the musicians? How have they secreted them inside this box? And Sarah's like, that's a speaker. You're not supposed to stand that close to it.
So good. That's her explanation of like the speaker and like the DJ and the music. Yeah. She did a great job with that, trying to explain that to him.
Yeah, and then her saying, this is rock music. What do you think? I'm not sure I could think at all.
She's like, yeah, that's the point. That was really cute, her showing him how to dance. I really love that.
Yes. Then dancing to Crazy. That was
yes.
Slow dancing. I love how he was so old-fashioned. When he was asking the DJ, he was like, can you play something slower? And then when he walks back over to Sarah, he extends his hand.
Oh, yes. It reminds me of like those, like the movies, like the Jane Austen novel turned into movie, they do the little dancing like that. Yeah, that was really great.
And those looks. Can we just talk about those looks first?
Oh, I know. Their chemistry was on fire.
Yeah.
They did so great. And of course, Have to mention the kiss in the rain. That was probably the
Yes.
best part, or one of the best parts of the movie. It
I
was
would
so
say
well
top
done.
2.
Yes, yes, so well done. It reminded me of The Notebook.
I was about to say that. That gave me Notebook vibes.
Yes, a nice kiss in the rain. So
And that
sweet.
kiss.
I know. And I'm so glad that Ted saw it. I mean, even though it just fueled his jealousy, but I was like, yeah, Ted, you see that.
Yeah. This was a really brief moment, but I love right at the beginning how Sarah, Henry, and Calvin are in the garden, and Calvin is telling Henry how the vegetables are space pops.
Yes, I
or
love
slugs.
That. Yeah, he's trying to get him to like use his imagination and just like be a kid.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
Henry finding Rip in the barn, and then Sarah and Calvin coming in the barn as well.
Yes.
Henry says, "Are you a robber?" And Rip's like, "No, I assure you, I'm a man of honor."
That was so good. I love that she brought a gun. Like usually in the Hallmark movies, they have like a frying pan or like a hair dryer, but she like actually has like the gun and she's like walking out there. I was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
A little more realistic.
Yeah, it is. And I was about to say, it looked like a gun you would actually see in the Revolutionary.
Yeah, it did. That's a good point. It really did.
Oh my gosh. I love when Sarah turns on the lights and Rip is like, "How did you do that? Are you a witch?"
Yeah.
And Henry was like, "She was last Halloween." And Sarah's like, "I thought I told you to stay inside."
Oh man, that was so good. He calls her a spinster and then questions her pants.
Yes. He says, "You're a spinster, forced to wear pants and look mannish to protect your family." Oh. Okay, now you're pushing it.
Yeah. Like, come on, dude.
Also, Rip trying the stew, and he was like, "This is quite possibly the best stew I've ever eaten." And Henry's like, "Seriously?" It was like, the man clearly has a refined palate.
Oh my goodness.
Rip meeting Ted. Rip saying, "Are you from the local constabulary?" What even is that word? I
know. It's like, what?
I've never heard that word, I don't think. And Ted is like, "The what?" "No, I'm Deputy Ted Collar with the Doolittle County Sheriff's Department."
It got me thinking, like, they call Mounties like constables. And so I wonder if that is like, derived from constabulary or whatever the word he used.
Constabulary. It could be. Yeah. Maybe an office of the Mountie.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Maybe. I wonder if that's what it's called in Hope Valley.
Oh, yeah. It could be. I mean, it's probably some type of old-fashioned name.
Yeah. I'm not making fun or mocking the Mounties.
No, of course not. We're just trying to figure out. Yeah. This movie is like a history lesson and like a science lesson all rolled into one.
That's one thing I loved about this movie. We also got some history with it.
Yeah. Who did you say wrote this movie? I wonder if they like are a historian or like studied history in college or something.
The writer was C.J. Cox.
C.J. Cox. I'll have to look them up.
Yes. I also loved in that scene how Rip said, "This is a strange carriage. You have no horses." Horses? "Oh yeah, I got 380 of them right under the hood there." "They must be tiny." "Yeah, they're real small."
I'm guessing he goes along with it.
Referring to the
horsepower.
Yeah. Horsepower.
Yeah. Yeah, that was perfect. This movie started out just like so funny and like clever. Yeah. The wit, it really drew me in from the beginning.
Yes, same. Also, when the doctor said he wants to get a haircut in response to being asked about the last time he saw a dentist.
That was good.
That was priceless. Sarah, Henry, Calvin, and Rip in the garden. So this is the day after he was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
He's talking about how the carriages, doors, and lanterns all work by themselves. And Rip is like, am I dead? Is this heaven? And Sarah's like, if this were heaven, I'm not so sure he'd be here, referring to her father.
Yeah. I was like, whoa, calm down, girl.
Calvin was like, I am a lucky man to have a funny daughter.
Uh-huh.
And Henry was like, are we going to talk all day or do you want to pull some roots? Oh, yeah, this scene when they are in the barn and Rip is milking the cow and Sarah mentions that she made breakfast and how it's vegan, and Rip's like, vegan? I don't know what that is. No animal product. Meatless bacon. Yeah, or some people use turkey. That's not bacon. Why would you do that?
Oh, I love that. I was like, thank you. Yes, turkey bacon is not real bacon.
No. We call that ham.
Yeah.
Or I believe another term for it is Canadian bacon.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Oh, this moment makes me laugh. When Sarah was talking to Ted and then Ted walks away and she sees Rip putting on his shirt and she walks over to him and she says, so I was thinking that once we finish up here, maybe we can try and find out a little bit more about your chest, your past, your past. I'm gonna,
She excuses herself. Oops.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, we saw her checking him out.
Rip's reaction to the razor.
Oh, so funny. And the tractor, he just gets so startled. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. The scene when they're in the farmhand house and they're talking about the date on the wood, which is his birthday, and Henry's like, give me a break. And Rip is like, what would you like me to break? And Henry's like, 1758. So you're like 1,000 years old? More like 250. But he's joking. Rip says, no, I'm 31 years of age. Henry says, so you were born in like 1991? 1991? Now you're the one being funny. And then he mentions it's another particular date.
Yes.
And I'm not going to say it because it's a trivia question. This was really brief, but I loved when Henry's going to school and he waves to his mom and Rip.
Oh, yeah.
That was really sweet.
She like turns around.
Yeah.
Like a really big wave.
He's like,
yeah.
We get to this scene with Henry and Rip sitting on the rock. One of my top favorite moments in this movie.
Yes, agree.
I love how he says, permission to approach your castle, Sir Henry.
Yes.
And Henry's like, it's just a rock. And then they talk a little bit and Rip says, rocks, soldiers, scoundrels, shumps. There are ways to use their size against them. And then Henry asks if he can teach him how to fight wily. Rip says, I have seen a lot of combat. It's awful. Fighting is a terrible thing, and it should be avoided if there's any other way. That's really good advice.
Yeah.
For anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, Rip, and Calvin at the farmer's market. I love how Calvin says, those ladies are back again. And Rip was like, would you ladies care for another sample of our homemade apple butter? Maybe you would like to take some home. It's only 5 shillings. Dollars a jar. He certainly seems to be able to make friends very easily. Are you going to keep making jokes or are you going to go help the customers? I'm going to go help the customers.
Yeah, Rip makes a great salesman.
He does, yes. You mentioned their conversation on the porch was one of yours. When he is playing with the blade of grass and everything.
Yeah.
I loved that moment. And another line I thought was funny is when Sarah says, the only thing disturbing me is you calling me ma'am. And then she was like, it's not the 18th century anymore.
Yeah. Oh.
Rip complimenting Sarah and apologizing for thinking he overstepped.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was really sweet.
Yes. He's a gentleman.
Yes. I love the montage of Sarah and Rip in the barn, Rip teaching Henry how to defend himself, Rip and Henry working on planting things, and then the reaction to the tractor, which you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And Henry and Rip sword fighting with sticks and Sarah watching them from the front porch.
Yes, so sweet.
Yes. I loved his reaction when they arrived in New York and she was like, this is what I was talking about. Freaking.
Yeah.
He's just like looking up at all the skyscrapers.
Yes. Oh man, I couldn't imagine.
Oh.
Completely in awe.
Yes. I can't remember if you've told me before, but have you ever been to New York?
I have twice. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I've been twice too.
Yes. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I went the first time with my mom and dad and brother and grandmother and aunt and uncle and cousin.
Wow.
On my dad's side, because his sister and her husband, so my aunt and uncle, they lived in New Jersey at the time, about an hour and a half away from the city. So we went up there, I think it was August of 2009, before school had started back for the year, and we spent the day just walking around. I don't think we did a whole lot because, you know, New York is so crazy. So
yes, overwhelming.
I think a lot of what we did was just shopping. We didn't go to any of the landmarks or anything. But the second time we went, it was just me and I was on a school trip.
Right. Yes. You got to see a musical.
Yeah, we got to see 3 Broadway plays. We saw American Idiot, which is the music of Green Day. And then Anything Goes and Arcadia.
Wow. So fun.
Yes.
That is the only thing that we didn't get to do that I wish we could have.
Yeah.
We went in December of 2013. And so it was like Christmas time and it snowed and it was
that's awesome.
lovely. And we loved it so much that when we got married, we decided to go for our honeymoon.
That's awesome.
We spent a week and did all of the touristy things, you know, shopping and Empire State Building. We went to see Statue of Liberty and
that's awesome.
All that fun stuff. So I love New York. They did a really good job, you know, showing around in this movie.
Yes, they did. We didn't see the Empire State Building. We didn't have time for that. We had a specific itinerary, but it was still a lot of fun. And for any of you that don't know, a fun story, I'm sure a lot of you have seen Laura Osnes on the Hallmark Channel. She was in Anything Goes when we were there, and I got to meet her and some of the cast after the show, which was awesome.
So fun.
I don't know where the playbill is, but I got my playbill autographed by her and some of the cast.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yes, it was a lot of fun. Cool. And she's really sweet. Very sweet person.
Yeah.
I think another favorite thing of mine was going to Top of the Rock, which is Rockefeller Center.
Yeah, we got to go there too. That's a beautiful scene as well, looking out over the city up there.
Yes, it is. I loved the pictures I took of the city from Top of the Rock.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I took some with my friends that were also on the trip with the New York skyline behind us. It's awesome.
Yes.
Rip and Sarah's walk and conversation by the church. So this is when she was telling him about Simon. I love when he says, baby daddy?
Yes. Is this the first time we have heard the term baby daddy in a Hallmark movie?
I think so, if I'm correct.
It is for me. I was like, wait, did she just say what I thought she said? So that was so great.
Yeah, I also loved how Rip says, I'm sorry, there's nothing less honorable than a Man abandoning a woman with child.
Yes, agree.
So sweet. Yeah, and Sarah agreed as well.
Yes.
You already mentioned them going to the edge. That was another favorite scene of mine.
Mm-hmm.
When Ted comes to Sarah's house and Rip interrupts them, and he's like doing his greetings, and he's like, good evening. And Sarah's like, it's afternoon.
Uh-huh.
And then I think the next thing he says is hello. He's like, hello.
Hello. Very formal.
Yes. And then the last thing he says as he's walking out of the house, I believe, is good day to you, sir.
Uh-huh. Such the polite gentleman.
Yes. Oh, one thing from the festival I have to mention before I forget. Rip roasting Waylon about the items he's selling at the festival.
Yes, he schooled him. That
He's
was
like, actually.
perfect. Yeah, actually. Oh, he called him out on his lack of knowledge.
Waylon like tripping on the way to.
Yeah, it's like my phone's ringing.
Yeah.
I know. Go Rip. That was perfect.
Yeah. Yes. The kiss in the rain, which we already talked about. Major
perfect,
Notebook vibes. I love how he says after she kisses him the first time, I'm a man of old-fashioned principles.
Oh, yeah.
Him kissing her hand, I just gotta mention that.
Oh, that was sweet too. I loved that.
Heart melting.
I know.
The day after, their conversation in the barn when he says, last night was the most wonderful moment of my life.
Oh, so sweet.
Hard eyes.
Hard eyes, yes.
The second to last scene when she finds him in the cave and he says, what are you doing out here in this storm? Are you mad? Sarah says, you're the one trying to go back 2.5 centuries in time and I'm the one who's crazy? Then he says, I'm ruining your reputation. I have nothing to offer you. And she says, I decide what you have to offer me.
Oh.
And then the proposal, but I will gladly forego my chance to go back to where I belong if you would do me the unimaginable honor of giving me your hand in marriage. And then Sarah says, we don't have to get married yet.
Yeah. A little too much too soon. Let's just
Still a sweet moment.
Yes.
And then the second kiss in the rain in the cave.
Yes.
I also loved the closing narration from Rip and the montage of scenes, including the ones with his father. That was great.
Yeah. I love that as like the closure that we get to see that his dad got his journal and read it. And, he read Rip is happy. He found happiness and that he forgave his father. That was that was a good ending.
Yes, it was. He says, April 12th, 2022, as I finally consider the strange occurrences which have befallen me, I am loath to admit I have spent the better part of my life consumed with bitterness towards my father. Truthfully, though no fault of my father's, my life has been quite lonely. I now deeply regret such animosity. However, all of that has changed. The house I have always lived in has finally become home, and it's only taken me a few centuries to find it. I have discovered happiness with a remarkable woman and her son and her father. They have opened my eyes to true love. I only wish I could share such a gift with my father. I am not certain where my future lies or if I will ever return to him, but I pray somehow that he will know his son does love him well. I have learned about such things from a remarkable woman who wears pants and who gives me hope that in the future, all things are possible.
Oh, so lovely.
And then the movie ends.
Yeah, very touching.
Yes.
I would really like to see a sequel to this movie.
I would too, yes.
I really enjoyed this movie.
I did too. I would venture to say it was one of my favorites of this year.
Yeah, me too. I mean, like visually, like just beautiful. The scenery,
Yeah.
that big house, that big
Yeah.
yellow farmhouse,
Yes.
the wardrobe, like
Yeah.
it was a really nice movie. I really
Yes.
enjoyed it.
Yes.
10 out of 10.
Yes. 10 out of 10 pocket watches.
There you go.
I had to put a little old-fashioned spin on it. Do we want to briefly chat about the most tear-worthy moments before we get into trivia?
Yes.
You want me to go first this time since you went first last time?
Yeah.
So the first one I have on my list is when they are in the farmhand house and he is telling the story of his life and his father. That really made me cry a little bit.
Yes.
Especially the parts when he's talking about his parents fighting and then him leaving.
I know. That's so sad. Not a very happy childhood.
Yeah. The second one I have is Ted's conversation with Rip, which we mentioned a little bit a while ago, calling him a con man to his face and mentioning his taking advantage of Sarah, Henry, and Calvin. Ugh.
Slimy, sneaky snake. Jealousy.
Yes. Rip saying, I assure you that is not what I am doing here. I have tried to behave in only the most honorable manner. And then Ted saying, you fooled these people into thinking you belong here, but you do not. And in the end, all you're going to do is break their hearts. I would never want that. Ted saying he wants to give Sarah things he believes Rip never could. Ugh.
I know.
Ted saying, what do you really bring to the table aside from silly stories and zero prospects? Rip says, I think I have something to offer that men of this time have long forgotten. Of course, we mentioned this earlier, but Ted telling Rip that if he truly loves Sarah, he should just do the right thing and let her go. Ted saying, your presence here is doing damage to her and her entire family. And then he goes on to give the reasons why.
Yeah. Not a fan of Ted at all.
Ted also saying, a real man wouldn't do this, Rip, even if he is delusional enough to think he fought in the American Revolution. There is no future for you here. And then Rip says, and if you stay a moment longer, you might not have any future left at all.
Yeah. Snap, snap.
That line when he says, a real man wouldn't do this, I was thinking in my mind, Rip is more of a man than you ever will be.
Yep, exactly. Oh.
Go, just, Ted, you can just go.
Get out of here.
Oh. And the last one I have on my list is Sarah reading the note from Rip, which says, my dearest Sarah, Henry, and Calvin, I must sincerely apologize for my sudden departure. I feared that if I were given weeks or months in the world's greatest volumes, I still would never find the proper words to express my gratitude or convey the depth of my feelings. And thus I will depart, much as I arrived, with no fanfare or warning. This storm seems like my best chance to go back to where I indeed belong. I'm sure it will be for the betterment of us all, since I have never desired to cause your family any more distress. It is with a heavy heart and all of my fondest affections I bid you farewell. Yours most truly and always, Rip. And then Henry saying, what if he does get back this time and I don't even get to say goodbye?
Oh, that was so sad. And you could tell he's like tearing up in that moment.
I know.
Oh, little Henry.
I know.
Oh, I know.
What are some of yours on your list, or did you have the same ones as me?
I did have the same ones as you, and also just Henry being bullied was so sad.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. He had like that mark on his cheek where he had been hit.
Yeah.
Oh, I went into like mom mode, and I'm like, no. Ain't nobody gonna hit my kid.
Yeah, that was sad too.
Yeah, that was sad.
I guess it is time for trivia. Trivia. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay, number 1. How much were they selling the jars of apple butter for?
5 shillings.
5 shillings a jar.
Oh.
Yes. Ding, 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 ding.
Ding, ding, ding. What did Henry say Rip was eating when he found him in the barn?
Turnips?
Yep.
Woo!
Good job.
Yay. Okay. What was the object that they removed from Rip's leg?
A bullet, of course. I didn't catch the name of it, but it was some long name.
Yes, it's a brown bess musket ball.
That was it, yes.
You were close, you know.
Where is the new restaurant located that Ted invited Sarah to dinner?
Oh, this one I have no clue. I'm just going to say Boston.
No.
No.
New Haven.
New Haven. Oh,
Yes.
Connecticut. I should have known this. Gilmore Girls.
I was about to get that hint. I was like, Gilmore Girls.
You know, and he said it, and I was like, oh, I immediately thought of Gilmore Girls.
I should have said, just think Gilmore Girls.
Oh, that would have been a really good clue.
Oh, I love that show, by the way.
Me too. Well, we can talk about it on a podcast sometime. I could talk for hours about the show.
Yes.
Okay, question 3. What was the name of Henry's dad?
Oh, no. Let me think about that for a second because I already said it a little while ago. Simon.
Simon, yes. Ding, 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 ding. I actually thought of another question I'm going to ask you. I originally had 3, but I have another one. Go ahead. Oh, okay. When they're in the city, it's a very quick scene, and they're standing there, and Rip is holding 5 of these in his hand. Well, I think he's eating 1, and then he has 4 in his hand. When they're in the city, he's eating it.
Oh, gosh.
It's something very popular that you would eat in New York. Not pizza.
I was going to say it's not pizza. What does it start with? Can you give me that?
It starts with an H. And they have these stands on like every street in New York.
Oh, he was eating 3 hot dogs.
Yes. It was 5.
Oh, it was 5. I thought it was 3.
5. I couldn't believe it. I was like, did he really order 5 hot dogs?
I think I would be sick if I ate 5 hot dogs at a time.
Totally. I was like, okay, is that just because maybe he's like super hungry or because he's never eaten a hot dog before and he loved it, so he just got a bunch of them?
I don't know. Were there hot dogs back in the 17th century?
I doubt it. I mean, maybe they had like sausage, and that's kind of close to hot dog.
That was a great question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. According to the date carved into the wood, when was Rip born?
1758.
Yes. Bonus if you get the day.
Was it April?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I can't remember the date. 12th?
Nope. Down a little.
9?
Oh, you're really close.
10?
Nope.
8?
Yes. April 8th. Good job.
Woo! April 8th. Okay.
See. What year did Rip think it was? Now, this was in the same scene.
Oh, yes. I actually wrote this down. 1787?
Nope.
Oh, no!
You're close.
Really?
Nope. You're just a few years off.
I don't remember.
1789.
89. Okay.
Yeah.
The synopsis says 87. So that's, I don't know why okay.
And my last question, where was the cave located that Rip tried to get back home?
Oh, I cannot pronounce this. It's like Kiniseki.
Nope.
Iwasaki.
Nope, that's what they thought it was, but it was something else.
Like Pikes Peak or something like that.
There is the word peak in it, but it's
Eagle
not pike.
Peak.
Yes.
Woo!
Good job.
Took me a minute to get there, but I figured it out.
I was about to give a hint and say something like, it's our country's bird.
Our national bird. Perfect. Oh, man.
Well, that was a lot of fun. This was such a great movie, and I'm glad you could join for this recap.
Thank you for having me on. I had a lot of fun.
Of course. Yes, and we'll definitely have to have you back on.
Yes.
Maybe for some Gilmore Girls
Absolutely.
recaps. And of course, more Hallmark movies.
Yes.
The future. All right, Hallmarkies, I think that wraps up our recap of Rip in Time. We will be back soon to recap A Splash of Love, starring Rhiannon Fish and Benjamin Hollingsworth. Two SSD
alumni.
Yes. Charlie and Charlie.
Charlie versus Charlie.
That will be a lot of fun. So we hope you tune into that. We thank you so much for listening. We love y'all and hope you have a great night. We will see you next time. Bye.